Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening and welcome to the Village of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting of May 13th, 2021. Again, due to the ongoing public health and safety concerns with COVID-19, the board is meeting via video conference using the Zoom platform in accordance with the governor's executive orders. There is no public participation in person tonight. Rather, the public can watch the live meeting online through Zoom. Notice of tonight's meeting was published as required and is on the village website. The web notice included instructions for members of the public to access the meeting and participate in any public hearings. Comments will only be taken during the public hearing portions of the meeting as usual. In order to participate, I'm having trouble speaking tonight, I'm sorry. In order to participate, please do the following. Members of the public attending online via the Zoom app may use the raise hand feature at the appropriate time if you would like to make a comment. The feature is located at the bottom of the screen. Those attending via telephone can press the *9 button. And my video's not on, I'm sorry. Press the *9 button. The meeting host will see that your hand is raised or that you have pressed *9 and will unmute those waiting one at a time so that you can speak. Lastly, comments can be emailed during the meeting to Jaime Martinez, which is jmartinez@villageofossining.org. That's JMartinez@villageofossining.org. Any written comments will be read into the record. Please note that tonight's meeting is being recorded and a video and a transcript will be provided at a later date. Now, we have a couple of ground rules. Ground rules are, in order to keep the meeting orderly and ensure we get a clear recording, please follow these ground rules. When you are given access to speak, please state your name and address. If you are speaking during the public hearing, please limit your comments to the matter which is the subject of the hearing. If any speaker is inappropriate, they will be immediately cut off and access removed. Board members, please mute yourselves when you are not speaking. Board members, I will call on you one at a time to speak to avoid anyone speaking at once. If you wish to speak at any time when I'm not calling on you, you may also use the raise hand feature or literally just raise your hand so I can see you and call on you. We will use roll call voting for purposes of all board motions. This is to ensure that the record is clear. Thanks to everyone for their patience as we still continue to navigate our way through this process. So for the benefit of the record, we are going to do a roll call to kick things off. So when our village land use attorney, Amanda Rossi, says your name, please indicate that you are present.
Marlene Cheetah.
Present.
George Bailey.
Present.
Bob Daraya.
Present.
Kevin Griffith.
Present.
Mark Gorechny.
Present.
And just for the record, it's the April meeting, not the May meeting.
Oh, did I say? I don't know why I said May. Oh, okay.
Jumping
I'm sorry,
the gun.
I'm a month ahead.
And we have Land Use Council, me here. We have Building Inspector Joseph Augustinelli, Planning Director Jaime Martinez, and the Jamie Kane, the Board Secretary, also in attendance.
Our highly recognized Board Secretary.
Yes, that's right.
Jamie Kane.
Indeed.
And our Board of Trustees liaison, Bob Fritchie, is also in attendance.
Okay, I believe we are ready to start. So if the first person, Birch Brook Manor, owners 8189 South Highland Avenue, is present, we can get started.
Yeah, we have Dan Patrick, Cuddy and Fader. And Dan, you're on. Is there anybody else representing your side that you wanted to bring in?
Yes, Paul Sysak from JMC should also be on the line. He's a project engineer.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Daniel Patrick from the law firm Cuddy and Fader. I'm here on behalf of Birch Brook Manor Incorporated, the owner of 8189 South Highland. As indicated, I'm joined this evening by Paul Sysak of JMC. He's a project engineer. And we are here this evening requesting the third 6-month extension of the area variance relief granted in October of 2019. The variance relief was granted for 8189 South Highland, which is currently developed with 5 multifamily residential apartment buildings constructed around the 1940s. The property's lot area is currently undersized and legally non-conforming with regard to the village's lot area per dwelling requirement. The applicant has recently received site plan and preliminary subdivision approval to subdivide the existing lot into 2 lots and construct 5 new townhouse units along the east side on the easternmost lot. The proposed townhouse development is fully compliant with the zoning code. However, the applicant was required to obtain area variance relief for the subdivision as it was subdividing the already undersized lot. So as you are aware, the village requires that a building permit be pulled within 6 months of approval or the variances be extended. In this case, the variances were granted in October 2019. Since then, our team has been working diligently to obtain the final approvals or obtain the approvals from the planning board. As indicated, we've received the site plan approval and preliminary subdivision. And our team, our engineers and the client have been working diligently with village staff, consultants, as well as the county to finalize the sanitary sewer designs so we can obtain final approval from Westchester County Department of Health. And once we receive that approval, we can return to the planning board for final subdivision approval and any other required approvals, as well as, and once approved, seek the building permit that's necessary to close out this variance. So we are here, as indicated. I'm here to answer any questions that you guys may have. Paul Sysak is also here to answer any questions you may have with regard to the status of the engineering. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This is a zoning board approval that was actually approved in October 2019, March 2020, and then again in October 2020. So not everyone on here is familiar with the whole project, but some of us have been here through a big chunk of it. So if there are no questions from the board, I'd like to be able to open the public hearing.
Open the public hearing.
Okay, I second that.
So I have a motion to open the public hearing from George Bailing and seconded by Bob DeRio. If there's no objection to the motion going forward, then the public hearing will be opened. There's no objection. We will open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone else in the audience, Jaime, to speak on this matter?
No one in the audience, and I don't have any emails.
Okay. So if there is no one to speak in the audience and no one else to speak on this matter, then may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to
DeRio, so
close.
moved.
Second.
Okay. Then the motion to close the public hearing by Bob DeRio, seconded by Mark Gorechny. Okay. If there is no objection to closing the public hearing, then the public hearing will be closed. There's no objection. Public hearing is closed at this time. This is a continuation of an area variance. And I'm just going to double check with Amanda. Do we just have to make a motion to grant the applicant's extension for another 6 months?
Yep, that's all that they're requesting. I mean, you can make it subject to all the prior conditions and everything in their original resolution and their extensions if you'd like. And Bob has a question.
Okay.
No, I have no question. What I'm suggesting is perhaps we make a motion that's subject to all the prior conditions and approvals, that we grant this extension for another 6 months.
I don't disagree. I agree. Don't agree with you. I think that we should not, because they haven't got their act together now for a couple of times. It's time for them to get their act together, and I'm not in favor of granting it again. Let's let it go till they finally know what they're going to do.
I think the problem has been, George, that though this is their third time asking for this extension,
Yeah.
there has been a lot of hang up between the start of COVID. There were some things with the planning department. It wasn't like they just sat, they didn't do anything. They were diligently moving forward. So I think granting them another 6 months with all the conditions in place at least buys them a little bit more time to move forward with their project.
Yeah, I do want to, acknowledge, at least here, they have submitted some documentation. So the challenge with this particular application is that it requires planning board approvals, zoning board approvals, local engineering approvals, and county DOT, Department of Health approvals. And so the hang up for them at this point has essentially been the connection between what they're doing to get the Department of Health approvals from the county and the engineering. But once they're done with that part of the application, they're going to have to go back to get a final plat plan approved. And at that time, they're still going to have an additional layer of approvals because they have to go through wetlands approvals as well. So while I do understand the concern about this process taking a long time, it really hasn't been advantageous for it to have taken that long, and they still have some ways to go. So this approval really is only a very sort of small piece of the larger puzzle for them to move on this application. And unfortunately, it is possible that after that plat plan, it takes a little while with the wetlands application. They could be back here, and it's just the way the length of these approvals is going to take. So
Yeah, unfortunately, the code states that these approvals only last for 6 months. It's not exactly the norm. You'd usually have the approval lasting a year. So I think maybe it feels like they've been before you a lot. They have, and that's because the approval is only for a 6-month period.
So where do we go from here?
So may I have a motion to grant the 6-month extension with
So
all the
moved.
prior? Okay. Jamie, did you get that?
Subject to all of the existing conditions that were originally applied by.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back
Need a
in
second.
the original,
In your original resolution.
Yes.
Okay.
yes. In the original resolution back granted in 2019. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So now we need a second.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mark Correctiony. Roll call vote.
Marlene Cheatham,
Aye.
George Bailing,
Yes.
Bob Durayo,
Aye.
Kevin Griffith,
Aye.
and Mark Gorechny.
Aye.
Motion carried. Mr. Patrick and Mr. Sysak, thank you very much. And I guess we'll see you in 6 months.
Yes, thank you very much. See you guys.
Thank you. Good evening.
Take care.
Thank you.
We're up to new business of the board. ZBA 05-2021, 14 Water Street. Is there anyone from BLDGWORKS LLC to speak to us tonight?
yeah, we have a bunch of people. So we have Eric Churchill, the applicants. We have Frank Filisciotto representing Creighton Manning. We have Ronald Steinverzel is the attorney for this application. And we have Skip Francis here, who's also with Creighton. And then I think Joseph Brennan, Joseph Brennan, also applicant. Promote him to panelist. Eric, is there anybody else from your team that I'm missing here? We can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Yeah, Eric, your
He's
headphones.
faded away.
Okay.
I'm
We
sorry,
can
what
hear you
about,
now.
Oh,
Okay.
there you go, Eric.
apologize. Yeah, so we'll be represented by Ron and Frank in this conversation.
Okay. Is there anyone else waiting to come on? Do you know? Or is
No,
everyone
Jim.
here?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know who's going, Mr. Steinverzel or Mr. Villicato?
Well,
Okay.
thank you. I try to be, with a name like Steinverzel, I try to be very sensitive to
Yours I got right.
pronunciation of
I
last
don't know
names.
how, but yours I got right.
Thank you.
Get over it.
Well, thank you, everyone. This is an exciting project for us. It is another step forward down on the waterfront. A number of us are not only representatives of the applicant, but local residents as well, and we're very excited about this project. It's a beautiful design in an incredible area of the village, and almost the entirety of our project is an as of right project, except for one little parking issue, and
Little issues.
yeah. and it's an issue that is created as an animal of the code, really, and the spatial constraints of this particular zoning district. I am but a messenger in this project, and there are two people on this call who are far more knowledgeable about the details of it, Frank and Eric, and I'd like to turn it over to them, and to the extent that any zoning questions or issues arise, I will jump back in. But as far as the artistic and cultural vision of all of this goes, those two gentlemen are the brains of the operation.
Thank you, Ron. And I have a presentation prepared of approximately 15 minutes to go through an introduction to this project and address the variances that are required. So if it's,
You can go ahead and share.
Go ahead and present my screen.
Okay, 14 Water Street, yeah. Okay.
So, I think that, where to start is that we're looking at this really, as Ron said, this really unique neighborhood that sits between Main Street, the train station, and the waterfront. And it has all the access to the amenities of Main Street. It has access to parks, and it serves as that vital connection. And this neighborhood has a unique potential to add vibrancy to the village through its continued development as a mixed-use district. It would be a disservice, though, to think of this area as only as a connector. It is really a place now. It is home to a great constituent of people that have lived there a very long time, and its future is rooted in its connection to that history. And we're excited to be a part of that future. We're utilizing a small vacant lot, and we hope to be, to work with everybody to move this project forward as a catalyst. Our proposal is based on a living and working model in Ossining. We have looked very carefully through all the visioning documents that have been recently prepared and think that our project fits very well into that narrative of growing that population in Ossining. Though our project is made up of two components, 9 two-bedroom housing units and commercial garage studios on the ground floor. This really addresses the 3 purposes stated in the Station Plaza North District to encourage mixed-use development on small properties near Metro North, to increase business near the train station and promote activity, and to provide opportunities for residential uses downtown. We feel that we're addressing all 3 of those items. Our commercial space on the ground floor is about a reimagination of the typology of the suburban American garage that has long been a platform for entrepreneurs, musicians, artists, hobbyists. But many people don't have access to this type of creative space. And so by introducing commercial garage studios, small spaces that you can rent yourself or for a small team of 1 to 3 people, we hope that we foster innovation in Ossining and foster opportunity for those that typically don't have access to creative, flexible space. There's precedent in the Mid-Hudson Valley for similar projects that are attracting the missing middle urban creatives to this area. And these projects have been quite successful. And as we look at what the population is and is growing in Ossining, we think that this is a great opportunity. So how do we approach our massing? We start with like I said, a vacant lot that is quite steeply sloped. It goes from 0 at Water Street to 18 feet, 100 feet back to the east, where we put our 4 stories above the grade plane. That 18-foot slope establishes a grade plane at 9 feet of elevation. So we put our 48 feet above that grade plane. Underneath that, we put our commercial ground floor, which would be considered a basement in this condition. We step the east side back 10 feet from the lot line to provide light and air and some visible space between it and the neighboring property. On the south side of the building, we carve out a south-facing courtyard to bring light and air into that volume of the bedrooms. We push the residential core to the north. This maximizes energy efficiency and improves occupant experience in the building. We then, on the front of the building, the west face, we push it back 8 feet 6. This helps break down the scale of the building, makes it more contextual to the neighborhood, and helps create the perception of only a 4-story building on the street, while still at the same time reinforcing the street wall. Finally, and we'll come back to this as part of our variance discussion, we are seeking a affordable housing density bonus of 1 unit that is placed on the west side of the project, tucked back into the hill as a 1-to-1 ratio. And then finally, we carve out these larger balconies with sun exposure, and these create both sun shading and a really nice space for occupants to reside. So in context of the neighborhood, how does this project fit in? We did a little analysis of what's there now. There are several 1- and 2-story houses, a handful. Predominantly, it is 3- and 4-unit buildings in this neighborhood. And there is precedent to go up to 5 and 7 units. Our project we're proposing is 9 units. The commercial spaces, there's a lot of ground floor commercial in the neighborhood. There's also industrial in close proximity, and ours is adding, that small ground floor of commercial space. and there's precedent in this neighborhood for mixed use, including the future DPW site. Our architectural statement is really about authenticity of materials, and how can we use real tactile materials to build a home that is both warm and inviting, and also has significant environmental advantages over concrete and steel. So how did we arrive at that? We looked around the neighborhood for architectural precedents, and we see this great tradition of masonry buildings. And in masonry buildings, you know, a brick wants to stack on top of a brick and create load-bearing vertical columns. And that's very prominent in these historical masonry buildings in the neighborhood. The other really prominent vernacular is on our particular street, we see wooden porches. This has long been a community aspect to this street, of people sitting on porches and inviting people into that space between the street and their home, and acting as that buffer. So we've combined both of those elements and built the front of the building with wood columns, and exposed wood columns that speak as a reference to the historical nature of our street. In front of that, we have layered masonry. This, instead of it being opaque, it's now translucent glass block. So you can read through that, but still speaking to the nature of masonry units. And we end up with a rendering that looks like this, with both the masonry and the wood porch showing through. We've also done that same style on the back. So the units in the back of the building have that same experience. And it creates here's another view of it from a bird's eye perspective. The floor plans on the ground floor, like I said, there are small commercial spaces, 1 to 3 desks that help, that are very flexible. A freelancer could come and work here, a freelance graphic designer, to somebody that wanted to have their home office down there, to a small business that is emerging in Ossining. All the residential units are 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. They're approximately 900 square feet. We're still massaging the interiors here, but that's the genesis. And on the 5th floor, where there is the additional bonus unit, there is a community strictly for the residents of the building, outdoor barbecue, community garden, kind of rooftop terrace. The site plan, we can come back to this as questions arise. The zoning compliance, to just put them both up on the screen at the same time. You can see the allowable zoning envelope that is on the right, and the massing diagram of what we've carved that up to be on the left. And as Ron started by saying, we are compliant to that, other than the parking and discussion of that affordable housing variance. So the 3 area variances that we are requesting are number of stories, solely sought for the affordable housing density bonus, the building height, solely sought for the affordable housing density bonus, and on-site parking, which I will explain is not feasible on a 30-foot wide lot. So to step through the number of stories, as I said a couple of times, we're really only after this to realize that bonus. And as the village code elaborates, the density bonus, applicants may have a density bonus of a unit count, which equals the number of units of affordable housing being proposed. So we have one requirement on 9 units of 1 affordable unit. And so we're seeking a density bonus of 1 unit. And, part of the challenge of this is that SPN does not have a prescribed density requirement of units per acre. So one can reasonably establish that the allowable zoning bulk and mass as described establishes that zoning envelope, and therefore the density bonus must reside outside of that envelope. And again, on that one-to-one basis. So to answer the 5 questions related to number of stories, will an undesirable change be produced in the character of the neighborhood? We really believe that providing affordable housing density bonus will have a positive effect on creating a mixed use, mixed income development near a train station. And part of the long-term success of Ossining is having that opportunity of equality. Can the benefit be sought in another method? No, we have utilized allowable density, and so we're asking for to be granted that bonus of a single unit. Is the requested areas of variance substantial? We're asking for the minimum of a 1-to-1 trade-off. And finally, is the proposed variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical environment, conditions of the neighborhood? We have pushed that unit back to the east that tucks back into the hill. So the overall height is only 4.5 stories above grade. We have done the most we can to minimize the effect of that additional unit. And is the alleged difficulty self-created? No, we've utilized the available zoning envelope, and per the Affordable Housing Code and Planning Board, we are granted that density bonus, which creates the condition that we're trying to address. Maximum height, I don't need to belabor the point here, is a similar condition in terms of why we're applying for it. Again, we're doing everything we can to minimize the effect of that. In fact, looking at the future of the form-based code that is being discussed, we are, doing those form-based codes now. We have setbacks that are deeper and at a lower elevation than future code will require. And so we think that we are, really working to minimize the effect of that maximum height. It's simply not possible to have a extra story and not also increase the height. Our floor-to-floor heights would not be legal.
My apologies. I do want to jump in real quick before you go past that. I wanted to clarify for the board that this district is not part of the proposed form-based district. The form-based district is only in the DC district and along Croton Avenue. So there is actually no provision or review right now that's being taken to change this district to require those form-based setbacks. So this would actually be conforming with the form-based style, even though it's not even proposed.
Correct. I'm just, thank you, Jaime. I merely show this that we did this actually before we knew of the proposed form-based code, and showing that there's alignment between that, the design techniques of trying to create height without creating too much restriction onto the street. Again, it's pushed to the far east of the project, where the height above grade will actually only be 40 feet, including the additional density, the additional housing bonus. So finally, our third area variance is the parking, and there's a couple elements here of the parking. The first is starting with our site, which is due to the narrow width of 30 feet, on-site parking is not feasible. when you take 30 feet and you put in a 10-foot core, and then you put in a 5-foot space for walking, and then you put in even if you slant the parking, your entire drive aisle is outside of the property line. And that also has no turnaround ability. So we've jiggered this around a number of times. And if you go in with this approach, even if you were somehow to configure this, you'd be expecting a occupant on a slanted parking structure to back out 100 feet across a sidewalk, which creates a dangerous condition for pedestrians. So we looked at options of, being able to turn around, and the upshot of doing those parking studies with Frank's help is that the minimum width that you would need to be able to do a T-turn and drive out would be almost 45 feet. Now, you can even tighten that up by assuming that you can cross over the other parking space that's there in blue, and therefore you have to have a buffer between the next car. So we looked at that option. And what that creates is that you may be able to get a maximum of 3 spots on the site, but there's no room for a building. We could turn this whole site into just parking, and you would get 3 on site and no building. And that would also come at the expense of creating a driveway on the street where there is parking right now and losing 2 spaces on the street. So the net impact of even this study gets you maybe 1, maybe 2 spaces and no building. So we go back to the intention of this neighborhood, and we find a lot of references to that this is intended to be one of the highest density development areas in the village. Its intention is to encourage mixed use and commercial activities through the central waterfront district. Some infill development and adaptive reuse of existing buildings should be encouraged throughout the central waterfront district. And we think that the intention of this project is that really speaks to those visions of both the zoning code and Ossining Tomorrow. The only strategy really that may be viable on a site like this is to do something like the picture on the right, where you have a parking pad in front and you push the housing all the way to the back. This clearly is not a mixed use development that's reinforcing the street wall like the rest of Ossining is doing. This is creating a suburban model that has parking in front and isn't really, there's no storefront. So this would also create a non-conforming project requiring residential on the ground floor. And you probably wouldn't actually net any parking either. So our response is to create that vibrant mixed use community is that, we really should prioritize that street wall that is not interrupted by driveways, where pedestrians are safe and the density is realized. And I think to create that, we really should prioritize the existing residents that live in this community and the future residents of this community for their needs. And as it says in the Ossining vision, the village-owned parking areas occupy a large portion of the central waterfront area, making it less attractive for people on foot and missing opportunities to provide more productive uses on portions of the parking areas. And I think as we look to the future, collectively, both existing residents and us, about what this can be, we want to holistically address the parking issue. And so how much parking is required? How much parking do we need? How much parking is available? Per code, we are required to provide 13.5 spaces for the residential, 5.75 spaces for the commercial, which rounds up to 20 spaces. When we look at the who's actually going to live here, we have residents that are going to use their car, residents that are going to use the train, that are looking for long-term parking. I should say the commuter parking is, you know, the resident who lives there that's driving out every morning is looking for overnight parking. The resident who is likely going to walk downstairs and rent one of the commercial spaces. And then we have an inflow of people that are going to utilize the commercial ground floor. Some people will drive there. We feel that many people will walk there, between people that live in the building, the future DPW site, people, excess demand that is already showing up at the Speakeasy up on Main Street. And finally, there's the building visitor, the short-term parker. We engaged Creighton Manning to conduct a parking utilization study of this area. The blue circle is an industry standard quarter-mile from the site. We recognize that that may be a little long of a walk realistically to get to parking. So we drew a red odd shape there that is a 6-minute walk from the site. And all the available parking that we address in the study is limited to a 6-minute walk from the site. And what we have found is that we project an overall demand of 14 spaces, looking at the user profiles and how they will actually use the property. And so none of those increase the demand by more than 10%. The overnight parking, you know, we're looking for 4 spaces, and there's 111 in the neighborhood, 50 of which are available during the parking study. And we can go through these in more detail. You know, the short-term parking, there's 223, and we're looking for 2 visitor parking spots. And so that's less than 1%. So finally, to address the specific questions, you know, will this create an undesirable change? We think that this is actually acting as a catalyst for redevelopment and promoting the character of the neighborhood that we want. The parking variance, you know, can we achieve this in another way? As you saw with those studies, there's just simply no way to get parking on a 30-foot wide site. Is it substantial? We think that with the available parking in the neighborhood, it is not as substantial. That also it is, you know, looking really at what the demand is of a transit-oriented neighborhood development. The demand is not 20. Will the proposed variance have an adverse effect of impact on the physical conditions? You know, again, we think that this, to the contrary, this will have a positive effect on the district. We think that this will help expand the tax base. We think that this will help, you know, raise that neighborhood and create a more walkable, pedestrian-friendly condition. And is this self-created? You know, just to reiterate for the 4th time, no, we can't do anything about how big our site is. And even if we dedicated the whole ground floor, we would get 3 parking spots and no building. And so in conclusion, you know, 14 Water is a mixed income, mixed use, transit-oriented building, helping to reduce the parking demand. As population increases, this project will help flatten the curve between population growth and automobile trips, creating an economically and environmentally sustainable future for Ossining. So we're really excited to be a part of this community. And with that, I will open the floor. We have a number of additional information on questions that, you know, Frank and Ron and I can help answer.
With that, are there any questions from the board? I know it was a lot to swallow.
Still concerned a little bit about the parking.
I think that's something that we should discuss further. I also, and I believe that there's still the issue of looking at the area variance or the density bonus area variance for the additional apartment, and there's some other things that we can
Yeah, I agree.
discuss moving
Yeah,
forward.
I think this might be a good time, Marlene, for us to, maybe even Amanda, to explain a little bit about how the density bonus issue came up. Because this district is particularly unique, and I think Amanda can probably best elaborate on the challenge with that.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea because you as a zoning board probably don't hear a lot about the density bonus since it's an issue that the planning board normally takes up. In this zone, the SPN zone, there is no density specified, which is rare. And as a result, the applicant has proposed one affordable housing unit, which we're happy about, which is actually just required by the code because they've proposed a certain number of units. And so now they have to provide one affordable housing unit. And pursuant to the village's affordable housing language in the code, they're seeking to take advantage of a density bonus, which the language in the code states that for the number of affordable housing units that they provide, they may have a density bonus of a unit count, which equals the number of units of affordable housing being proposed. And normally the planning board would be handling this density bonus. But because there is no density in this zone for there to be determined a baseline density from which to determine a density bonus, we've discussed with village council and my office and staff, determined that the best course of action here was for this plan to come to your board first, since there's obviously a lot of density on this property, and perhaps because they can't provide on-site parking, an indication that, there's too much density. That's not an opinion. It's just, there's, a lot of density here. And so it's for your board to determine whether they should have the density bonus as shown on their plans. And as they've shown, in that extra half story, since the SPN zone requires them to have 4 stories and 48 feet, and they're seeking to put their bonus unit that they're entitled to on top of their 4 stories as an extra story. So that's how we came to be talking about this particular issue. It's very odd. I don't know if we'll ever see it again, but maybe it's something that someday the Board of Trustees can look at so maybe they could set an actual baseline density for this zone, but that's not what we're dealing with right now. We don't have that in the code to look at. So you're going to be important, your board is important in this case because you're going to be looking at this plan and kind of saying, is this acceptable to us or is it not acceptable to us? And then what you decide is acceptable will then go to the planning board and they will do their site plan approval, conditional use permit, et cetera, et cetera. So go ahead.
All right, so I guess in the case of what Amanda's saying, I think that on tonight, and again, we need to open and close the public hearing, but I think that we should declare ourselves as lead agency in taking on this, since we actually will have to figure out where we are before it can go to any of the other agencies or boards for their approval. So
I don't know if you, as for the public hearing, you can open it tonight. You don't need to open it tonight. But if you do open it tonight, definitely just adjourn it.
Okay, so then I believe, well, I would like to just to forego opening the public hearing on this on tonight. We have a lot of things. Just take it, let us, look at becoming the lead agency. We're talking about the parking, and we're talking about the additional area variance that would be needed for the additional apartment. But until we start with the lead agency and then get all of the secret reviews and everything back, we really don't have any, there's not much we can actually approve until we have all of that done tonight. Is that correct?
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, you have to, like you said, you're going to be the agency. I think that's the right decision. This, my view, this would be an unlisted action. And so going forward, we would need to, circulate to involved and interested agencies. Because this is west of Route 9, it needs to be referred to LWRP. Am I right about that, Jaime?
Yeah, so it has, so the project has gone to the EAC. The EAC is still finishing their letter.
Okay.
So they'll be submitting that after the fact, but they've already reviewed this. The planning board did know about it, kind of punted on it and sent it straight to the zoning board. They are planning on picking it up at the next meeting. So regardless of what happens today, I think that they are going to do that. I know you'd mentioned you don't want to have a public hearing today. I know there's at least one person in the public here that is from this neighborhood. So you may want to consider that. I mean, if you think it's better to wait, that's also up to you. But we do have at least one person from the neighborhood.
If I may, it's Ron Steinverzel. I'm not sure if anyone can hear me. I lost the option to put my hand up.
We can hear you.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. I obviously, as counsel to the applicant, I'd like to move whatever we can forward this evening. We certainly provide the requisite public notice, and to the extent that there's a member of the community who would like to speak on that, who received the notice, we would like to hear from that person and give them an opportunity to present.
Okay, thank you. If there's no objection from the board, then may I have a motion to open the public hearing for the person who is here to speak on this?
I approve.
Motion. Yeah, I second it.
So motion to open the public hearing by Mr. Bailing, second by Mr. DeRio. If there's no objection to opening the public hearing, then the public hearing will be opened at this time. No objection, motion, public hearing is open. Jaime, we have one person to speak.
Yeah, so far we have one person to speak. That's James Bennett. James, I have brought you in. If you could unmute yourself, and you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Bennett.
Has any of you people come down on Water Street to take a peek at Water Street lately?
Okay, but let's start with you giving us your name and address, and then we can go from there.
The name is James Bennett. I live at 12 Water Street. The property is right next to mine. I'm here with Mr. Mosley, who's on the opposite side of the property. And I've been down here for the last 36 years. It's a one-way street, very narrow. There's no parking unless you have a parking lot, at your house, which most of us do. It's very restricted for parking because you can't park for 2 hours in the daytime and no overnight parking. The street has been in disrepair since I moved here 35 years ago. And it appears that nobody ever comes through here, and there's a lot of traffic from the train, but nobody comes through here to actually look at the street for paving, for repair, for anything else. It would probably be the interests of the board to come down here themselves, take a peek at the properties. There's nothing down here over 4 stories. And Mr. Mosley, who sits next to me, would like to ask something too, if it's possible.
Mr. Mosley, you may speak, but please give us your name and address.
Okay, yes, thank you. Yeah, this is Clarence Mosley, and I'm the owner of 16 Water Street on the opposite side of the property. And I'm looking at this, and I really honestly believe that this is not a good project to put in this space. It's a very small space, and it's, you know, it's limited everything down here. I can't see the positive impact. I understand business. I understand what they're saying and what they're trying to do, but if you look in Water Street, it's a very narrow street. It's a one-way street, and between 8 and 18 Water Street, it's all 1 and 2 family houses. I was born and raised on Water Street, and that space that was there was a 2-family house there before. Now you have no space down here. We have a shortage of parking as there is. We share parking. We share parking with each other. We share parking with the businesses that are, in the area. And it's also a restricted area. So between 3 and 6 a.m., you can't park on the street at all. So for the size of this project to ask for, like not to have to provide any parking at all, I don't even feel that's a reasonable request. And I don't know how long we have to talk in this, but there's a whole lot of concerns I have about them even building on that property, because it's been empty probably close to 40 years. And I cannot see putting something of this size not having like an impact on my property or the surrounding properties without, compromising it or doing some kind of damage yet, because you've had a lot of sinkage. The property's banked up against our properties. And last, I'll try to, finish it off. I also have 2 structures on my property, which are right on the property line, my garage, and I have a brick shed in my backyard, along with my driveway, that are all on the line. So you start coming in with something like that, it concerns me. So, there's a lot of concerns, and there's a lot of negative impact, because that's going to cause a lot of more people, a lot more traffic, a lot more cars, which we don't have space to put them. And it's just not, I just feel like it's not the right space for something like this. There's no mixed use in this block. It's all if you come down, you see it's all surrounding. Most of the businesses are on Main Street, and nothing's over 3 stories. You have, the bar, the theater, the oil company, the distillery, all on the lower part of Main Street, and they all have their own parking lots for parking. So, it's just something that concerns me.
Okay, so
You don't want to mute yourself. Mr. All right, I just muted Mr. Bennett.
all right, so at this point, I'm not sure if Mr. Bennett and Mr. Mosley can still hear me, but I'm sure they can. We hear your concerns, and part of the reason why we are looking to, one, become the lead agency is that all the reviews of all the things that you have brought forward will have to go forward, and we will have some idea of what we're looking at as far as the parking and environmental issues and some of the things that you have brought to our attention tonight. If there is no one else to speak, Jaime?
Not at this time, no.
I
Okay.
have a motion,
May I
motion to
have-
close the meeting?
No, no.
Close the motion to adjourn the public
During
hearing?
the public meeting.
Adjourn the public hearing.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
May I ask, please? May I ask, please? Is that absolutely necessary? I mean, we did hear probably from the two most salient residents.
Because, and I'm going to stop you there, because we are just declaring ourselves as lead agency, we're not going to make any other determinations tonight, so the public hearing does remain open.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion to adjourn, and I'll second the motion to adjourn the public hearing. Bob?
So the motion to adjourn the public hearing was by George Bailing?
Right.
Okay, and the second was by Bob Durayo. If there's no objection to adjourning the public hearing, the motion to adjourn will move forward. I do need a motion for us to take, declare ourselves as the lead agency, and that will be a roll call vote, I believe.
Yes. So moved.
Second.
So motion to declare ourselves as lead agency by Bob Durayo, second by George Bailing. Amanda, do we want to go through a roll call?
Yes. Marlene Cheatham,
Aye.
George Bailing,
Aye.
Bob Durayo,
Aye.
Kevin Griffith,
Aye.
and Mark Gorechny.
Aye.
Just a quick point of a technical point of clarification, Amanda. Since the ZBA is declaring lead agency,
Yeah.
rather than declaring their intent to be lead agency, do they need to circulate notice?
Yes.
That should have been a motion to declare their intent to be lead agency. So we'll just, that's what we'll say it was. There does need to be a notice circulated of the intent to be lead agency.
So for
The only other
clarification
agency that
purposes,
has approval authority on this is the planning board. In order to meet the 30-day timeline to try to get this in time, do we need to circulate it to anybody other than the planning board? And if the planning board decides to, sort of kick it back and say allow the ZBA, would that position be ZBA to be the lead agency come next meeting?
As long as the planning board says that they're okay with the lead, with the ZBA being the lead agency, and if there are no other boards or agencies with discretionary authority, then they wouldn't be considered an involved agency. So I can't think of anybody else.
I can't. Yeah, I don't think so at this time.
Yeah, not the county. We can always talk in the morning.
The only other agency that has anything on this, I think, would be DPW for like a street opening permit and a building department.
Right, but those aren't discretionary.
No.
right.
So
They'd be interested. agency.
So basically it rests with the planning board and the zoning board.
Yes, in terms of discretionary decisions.
Okay.
So we'll
Is
see
there
how
an opportunity? Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask if there's an opportunity to address any of the comments made during the public hearing. I'd like to address some of those concerns, both for the benefit of the board and for the residents.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So, as concerns, use, mixed use, what have you, I want to be brief here, but as Eric expressed during his presentation, a lot of effort went into designing a project that listened to the words of the waterfront redevelopment plan, that focused on exactly what SPN North should be focusing on. And we find ourselves in a position that we often find ourselves in, which is as neighborhoods are progressing towards the goals of a particular plan, that that there are some changes that take place, and perhaps the most challenging ones are with the earlier projects like this one. And I certainly understand and appreciate the concerns of the residents as to the change or changes, if you will, but that really, as to changes that are directed by the mandates of the zoning code and the redevelopment plans, while we do and will continue to work very hard to be sensitive to the concerns of the neighborhood, we are being directed rather by the plans and laws already passed by the village,
So,
and as to parking, we go back to the same point of how do we satisfy the desires of redevelopment and the spatial constraints of this site.
okay, so I'm gonna stop you right there, because that's not going to be, we hear the issue, and we hear the issue from both sides, but at the end of the day, it really is going to be our ability to vet this out. So we're going to have to discuss this as the zoning board back and forth and figure out, at the end of the day, if those 20 parking spaces, where they fall, what decisions are going to be made, and how we look at this. And right now, I don't think we're going to come to an agreement tonight, and we're not going to come to a decision tonight. I do want to make sure that the public and the people that came out understand that we heard what they had to say. And we hear your side of the story also, but it's really going to fall on the zoning board as to what decisions are going to be made, along with our legal counsel and our village employees that will help us vet this all out.
Understood and appreciated, and thank you for that. But if I may, as parking is such an important issue here, if we could hear from Frank for a moment, who is our expert in the field, I would greatly appreciate it.
Marlene, as Frank did actually prepare a pretty lengthy parking study, I would advise that you do at least allow them to talk about that. That study is pretty detailed.
I see. Go ahead, Frank. Your hand is raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of the board. Just for the record, Frank Felicciotto with Creighton Manning Engineering, 145 Main Street in the Village. The basis of Eric's presentation vis-a-vis parking was largely on a study that we performed in the study area. And I think, I won't go through it line by line, but I think if the board is going to deliberate over the need for 20 spaces, there's a few things that are relevant, I think, to this particular use. Number one, within a 6-minute walk, there are 706 public parking spaces, whether it's in a lot or on the street. 706. Now, not every single one of those spaces is available to every single person at any single time, but there is a significant supply of parking within a 6-minute walk of this particular project. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as the SPN district notes and encourages, mixed-use development, especially cheek by jowl to a train station, is essentially trying to lessen the demand for parking that you would otherwise have if you were much farther away from the train station. And a mixed-use development will allow for parking demands to actually overlap or not overlap one in each other. So when you have a commercial development with a residential development, you don't have the demands of those two uses happening at the same time. There's a temporal difference between the parking demand associated with someone who lives in the building, but let's say works in White Plains and drives his car. That car is now gone during the day, and that demand is out of the picture. And if you have someone walking to one of the garage units, garage creative spaces on the ground level, you don't have demand there either. And our study sought to identify the worst case scenario, which occurs about at 2 p.m. on a weekday, when you'd have the most demand in the area and the most demand associated with this particular site. And basically what we found is that at any given time, there is adequate supply, minimum of 35 spaces, to accommodate the demand associated with our project, which we believe is no more than 14 at any one given time. Now, there are also some things in the area that, as you heard from the residents nearby, that were unfortunately in a position that we have to accept. Water Street does not allow overnight parking. There's 8 spaces on our block in particular that cannot be used overnight. There are things that could be done, and again, it's not part of this zoning board meeting, but what I think is speaking to us all is that there's 706 spaces. There's a demand for at most 14 at any given time. We're a single digit percentage of that total supply. And I think there's a creative way that we can achieve the goals of the SPN district in an area that has a significant parking supply already. And that's essentially what the parking study looks at. It tries to show and shows that there is adequate parking for every type of user at any point in time in the day that they need the parking. So with that being said, happy to answer any questions about it. I understand the board might want to review it and come back with more technical questions, but it was a thorough study. We looked at various times of the day, including an overnight period. We physically walked Hunter Road and some of the other streets, counted the available parking, counted the demand, and we saw that there is availability to accommodate this project. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mr. DeRio, I see your hand is up.
Yes. I live on Hunter Street, which is the next block up from Water Street. And I was a frequent patron at the local bar on Water Street under both owners. So I'm very familiar with the area. So first of all, the building doesn't look anything like the other buildings that are already there. It's a complete departure from the character of the neighborhood, which is a concern. Some of us like that old, small river town architectural design, and this design does not contribute to that, in my opinion. Second, living on Hunter Street and having spent 20 years commuting to Manhattan on the second shift, because I worked at 3 to 11 doing the news at Channel 11. And I can tell you that on most days, I had a terrible time finding a parking space at the train station. And if you're basing a parking survey on parking during the COVID epidemic, when most people are working from home, I think that, and I don't know if you did, but if you did, I think that the numbers are wrong, because once the rest of the world reopens, there's no parking spaces down there.
DeRio, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do just want to clarify. We did not treat the Ossining station lot in March of 2021 as representative of what it normally is. We note in our report that it was woefully underutilized.
Okay.
But we also don't anticipate that our residents would necessarily park there either.
Okay. as you have said yourself, there's no overnight parking on Water Street. And this is not a question so much for you as to Jaime. I don't know exactly what the process is for changing the parking from only daytime or to full overnight, or taking some municipal lot spaces and designating them to a particular building.
Yes.
Perhaps you could address that.
Well, yeah, let me try to jump in there real quick. So the parallel track, right? So this project came in at a time that we'd already been examining this district for, future uses under the comprehensive plan, as well as giving some consideration to the management of our parking in general in the village. As well as the fact that there's a DPW redevelopment site that's under proposal right now. It's about to move into the actual approval phase. And so all these things kind of combine to understand that, number one, we're looking at sort of shifting the development off of the waterfront to the east side of the tracks. So sort of preventing any development along the waterfront in order to sort of kind of mitigate any future impacts from sea level rises and things of that nature. There's a need for affordable housing. DPW site, about a year and a half ago, started out an RFP process, eventually landed on a developer to put something on that site. And one of the things that they asked for was the creation of parking on site. So that development, as it stands right now, is currently being considered with an additional deck of parking, would add an additional 50 spaces to that area. Through the parking management study, one of the things that has become clear is that this district has a lot of public parking, but that public parking essentially has been all allotted for people who don't live in this neighborhood. So that parking has all been dedicated to people in other neighborhoods. And so I'm sure there's a lot of ways that we can try to figure out the genesis of how that happened. But one of the shortcomings in our parking management in the village is that we didn't give proper consideration to the needs of the people who do live in this neighborhood. And that doesn't just include the people who are currently living there, but it also includes the property owners who'd like to do something on their lot. And so when they developed the SPN district, there were a lot of principles in play. One was that they wanted to have a walkable district. And so they insisted that in the entire district, including up the hills of Main Street and Seeker Road, that they needed to have stores in the front of the properties. And they also said, we want to have a higher density because it's sort of a local, TOD site. So we're going to allow people to build up to 4 stories, and we're going to set it above the grade plane because we know it's going to be high. So that's actually going to turn into about 5 stories. But what they didn't really take into consideration is the fact that almost all of these sites, especially those along the teardrop between Main Street and Seeker, are currently undevelopable with parking sites. Almost all of them. And so this is just a shortcoming in the development of that design. And so we know that parking is needed. To be honest, some of the first knowledge that I got from that was when the was coming in trying to get their variance. When we had members of the community saying, hey, we don't have parking for us. And that's been helping to feed some of the discussion about that additional level of parking in the DP. Trying to find ways to provide more parking in that area. That's why, we do know it's important. But at the same time, I think the planning perspective, my perspective, it's going to be really difficult for any property owner on that teardrop to build on their property and provide parking, no matter what they do, And so the only path for them to sort of address this is here in the board. I think that the village does have a responsibility to examine, how our own management is affecting this problem. But whatever happens to this site, whatever the board, the ZBA's decision is on how to handle this site, it won't change the fact that the village doesn't currently provide any public parking that is actually needed in this district right now. And so that's something that does have to be addressed.
Right. This district, and again, and I'm going to piggyback on, there are several districts in and around the village of Ossining that have major parking issues. We know that they do. And, that's, I don't think we're going to settle that tonight. I don't think we're going to make those decisions today. But I think it is a discussion that we will have moving forward. And I think that there's some things that we need to look at. And in particular with this site, because there is, and I'm going to piggyback on what Jaime just said, there is parking in the area, but the question is, and this comes to us, okay? So it comes to us in a way that we look at further development down the line, and we're also looking at the development in front of us today. So I don't want us to think that this is the end of the discussion. I think it's just the start of the discussion. And I think that we're going to have a few more round robins before we, settle on where we are. I do want to, I believe, thank everyone that came, and there's a lot that we have to muddle through. But I think we will be able to muddle through together.
I have one person from the public, James Bennett, has raised his hand again. So I wanted to, just in case.
Mr. Bennett has raised his hand again?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Bennett?
You already adjourned the.
Oh, we already adjourned the public hearing. He can speak at the next meeting.
Okay.
Just send.
You can also email him in.
He can, right, or he can email his comments to you.
Yeah, Mr. Bennett, if you do email any comments in, we'll make sure that your comments are not only read into the record in the next meeting, but they'll also be emailed out to the ZBA members.
To the entire board.
Yeah.
And the board meets every, second Tuesday?
Yeah. Every second Tuesday of the month.
Right.
Good. Oh, Bob, give me a call. I've got some thoughts on this I want to talk to you about.
Who was that?
George.
Okay, George.
If there's nothing else on this particular project, may I have a motion to, I believe, to adjourn this project until we are able to move forward on it. How's that?
Motion to adjourn.
Could we have a definitive date, please?
I don't know if we can give a definitive date.
Second Tuesday of May.
It will be the second.
Want me to pull up a calendar?
No.
Yeah, can we at least be calendared for the next meeting?
May 11th is the next meeting.
So this will be put on for the next meeting, Jamie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so May 11th.
Yeah, the only thing that would prevent that is the lead agency notice going, past the 30 days. You would still be on the agenda and carried over. They could still discuss your application. They just, again, you would, the 30-day notice.
If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Amanda tomorrow. But the reason I asked the question here in the meeting is so that it was clear to everybody that my intention is the notice is going to get sent to the planning board members, and we're going to try to see if we can get them to make a decision at the upcoming planning meeting to defer to the ZBA for lead agency. At that time, if they defer to the lead agency, then ZBA will automatically assume lead agency prior to the next meeting, and they'll be in a position to vote. Not saying that they will vote, but they will be in a position to be able to vote. That's the goal. But that's why I brought it up in the meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so may I have a motion to adjourn to our May meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion to adjourn by Mr. Bailing, second by Mr. Griffith. Do we need a roll call for the adjournment?
It's up to you. You don't need it.
So if there's no objection to the adjournment, then the motion to adjourn to the May meeting will be carried forward. There is no objection, motion carried.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you
very
all.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that is the end of the new business. The additional business of the board is the approval of the minutes and the resolution from the March 9th, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. So motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting by Mr. DeRio, second by Mr. Gorechny. If there's no objections to the approval of the minutes, and I don't know, we don't need a roll call for this. We do? We kind of sort of do. Okay. She's looking at me like you'd better do a roll call vote. So I guess we're going to do a roll call
I'm
vote for
sorry.
the minutes.
Oh, I didn't know. I'm sorry. My internet connection was off for a second. I didn't know you were asking me anything. You don't need to do a roll call for the minutes.
Okay, so if there's no objection to the approval of the minutes for the March meeting, then the approval will go forward as it stands. There's no objection, so the approval of the minutes will go forward. I wanted to wish everybody a good night. I do want to again congratulate Ms. Kane for her accolades given today. We do applaud you for a job well done. We may keep you around. I did, you know, I do see one of our village trustees on the line, so I'm hoping that he gets that message back to his boss that, you know, you deserve a raise and a half. He said, okay. He did not. He said yes. Okay. We're going to hold him to that too.
I did want to mention today, this is our 13th virtual meeting.
Yay!
We're now over a year.
Over a year on Zoom, right?
You don't want to know how many virtuals I've been on.
Yeah.
I
like
so
it.
you're up to 50. We're good. Yeah.
Even when I see people in person, I tend to look at them only in a little box. You know? And so like I don't see what's going on the side anymore.
Hollywood Squares.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yay for us. We're doing all right.
Yes. Yes. I know this. I know that there's a lot with 14 Water Street. It is a very small, narrow street. I do understand, you know, a lot of the issues that they're having. But I think we're going to have to kind of really have a discussion on this from our end. So let's think about it. I guess we'll meet next month and vet it out.
Can I just ask, so after, if we're approved as lead agency, and then at the next meeting, we'll hold another public hearing and then possibly another after that, or is just trying to get a sense of the timing?
So so when you're declaring your intent to be lead agency, we have to distribute it to anybody else who could be lead agency. That in this case is only the planning board because of the nature of the application. So the planning board, once they make their decision that they do not want to contest the ZBA's declaration, then automatically the ZBA becomes lead agency. At that point, you can start the seeker process, which is really to say that you can right now read the seeker documents, but you can't make a decision until you are lead agency.
Okay.
So once the ZBA makes a decision on lead agency or makes a decision on seeker, then you have the clearance to go ahead and vote on the actual application. So those can all take place at the exact same meeting. Okay. Vote on seeker, vote on the variances. And you can make all that at the very next meeting, but you can't make a vote on seeker until you are formally lead agency. There is a requirement that you're supposed to wait 30 days unless the other agencies affirmatively say we don't want to be lead agency. So I'm going to get that at the next planning board meeting, which is like in 2 weeks.
So I guess the real question is if the planning board wants to declare themselves as lead agency.
If the planning board wants to declare themselves as lead agency, then at the next meeting, you can either accept their decision, and then you can make your ZBA decision at that point, and the planning board has to wait. I'm sorry.
No, they can't.
Yeah, what
act
happens?
until
Oh
seeker's
yeah,
done.
no, that would throw a whole wrench in things. I'm sorry. Then you'd have to wait for the planning board to make their decision on seeker, and then you could make your decision on the ZBA item, and then the planning board could make a decision on it. It would needlessly complicate things. I think that, you know, one of the things that's so weird about this, the ZBA doesn't ever do this. Amanda talked about it earlier, and so I'm sorry if I'm repeating stuff here, but you know, in every single district you have like a base square footage. It says that, you know, 500 square feet per unit for the lot area, or 1,000. You must have 1,000 square feet per unit. So normally, you know, you have side yard setbacks, you have height limitations, and then you have that square footage that determines how many units you can have. But on this site, you can build to a zero lot line situation. So like in other districts where you have minimum requirements of setback, in this one, you have a maximum requirement of setback and a minimum of 0, right? You can have up to nothing. So you can build the entire lot and you can go up to a set height, and there's no number that says that, you know, if your lot area is this many square feet, then you can have this many units, and if it's, you know, double that, you can have twice as many units. And so the affordable housing ordinance which was written at a separate time, is premised off of a base density. But in this instance, there is no base density. So you
Correct.
infer a base density based off of what you can you know, get from your envelope. And the envelope here is the entire site. So there's nowhere to go. If you can't go sideways, there's nowhere to go but up. You know?
Yeah. But
that's the problem.
Just because I just want to say a thing, you know, just because you can doesn't mean you should. There is a school of thought that using every available square foot for saleable or rentable space may not necessarily be the highest, best use of every piece of property in our village. The design of this building concerns me because it does that. It absolutely uses every inch of that lot. I don't know.
Question that's in front of you.
And I don't know.
That's really the heart of the question in front of you. And so the building is going to be, I think, you know, it's going to be 4 stories at least, right? And then there's the above it, which don't count towards the additional height or stories. And so
the height's not my problem.
The question in front of you is the height, because
the question is the height, right?
You don't have the ability to tell them that they can't build wide, right? You do have the ability to say, no, you're not going to get the parking. And you have the ability to say, no, you can't go up an extra story.
Okay.
If they wanted to put up a square block building and just do nothing, legally,
Those design issues will be handled by the planning board and the BAR, which those approvals are also required.
Right. So we don't have the ability. I was going to jump back to Bob. We don't have the ability to approve the architectural review of the building. That doesn't fall under our purview, but we do have, we know, and I'm going to say this, as of right on that property, a 4-story building, if they had come to us minus the parking, they could build as of right. There is nothing stopping them from building that 4-story building by our code. So that extra story that they're asking to put on the back of the building actually backs up into Secor Road. So from the street end, you honestly, I don't even know if you would see it because it's behind the building and almost up the hill.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it. You would see it. It would be about 3 stories from the Secor Road side. But you know, you would see it.
Okay.
That's not that part is not in dispute. I think that if you are interested, though, in a view shed analysis of how it looks from Secor Road, you could request.
Okay.
That is definitely something that would be, I think, within the SECRA review that you would. Yeah, because normally I don't think
so
that.
If you want that,
go ahead.
We'll ask them
I
for
think
that.
that's something that we need to see, you know, because the people who live on Secor Road, I'm surprised that, you know, I guess in my head, I keep thinking it'll kind of like crest out at Secor Road, but if it's over Secor Road, then maybe we do need to see what that would look like from the Secor Road end of.
Yeah, it is
Hey,
going to be visible from Secor Road.
Were they
I think
required to
it's
notify the people on Secor Road?
They
So-
had a certain radius to notify within.
Yeah, everybody was notified. All of the properties behind the building. Not all. I think most of the properties going up Secret are abandoned right now.
Yeah.
They're
They're
abandoned.
One of the things I would tell you is part of the site plan approval. Fire department's gonna have to get involved in some of this because of accessibility around that building, since it's a small lot and the building's pretty much taking up the lot. So if you're approving a variance to go to the 5th story, you know, I would also consider what the fire department says about access, because the higher you make the building, the minimum access around all sides of that building can be a hindrance to access. So,
Thank you for
you know,
saying that.
part of that is going into that's going to be something part of the planning approval, because I'm sure the fire chiefs are going to have to get involved and see what they can access properly.
All right, Jamie, can we send a copy of the plans to the fire department? Yeah. Do you want? Would you like to request a comment from the fire department?
But isn't
Yes,
that a planning
please.
board issue?
That's a
It is a
planning board
planning board
issue.
issue.
So
Well,
I don't want to step on the planning board side of the bucket.
No, it
but
is.
if you, that's fine.
It is, but the fact that they're coming to you for variance for the 5th story, that 5th story on there, if it is an issue for the fire department, that could be, you know, because they're also requesting a variance for that. So I would think, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, I'll let Amanda and Amy take that, but I would assume that their comment on that may be a factor in whether or not you're granting a variance for a 5th story.
It's definitely a site plan issue. I'm not sure if it's an environmental issue.
There's lots to
I'll
talk
have to
about
look
here.
at the EAF. I mean,
I'm trying to think, maybe community services might fall under community services, EAF. So I think we could ask the fire department under community services, public
I
services.
think it would be smart and prudent.
I think we're going to also need to,
Yes.
if I may, update the applicant tomorrow on this additional discussion that's been going
Right.
Yeah.
since they're not here.
Okay.
It's not a simple question.
No.
No.
Right.
And look, I recognize this is a tough application, and I think there's a lot of ways of looking at it, and so I would, urge the board to think considerately and not, approve it as if it's a great thing and not reject it as if it's a terrible thing. But
That's right.
I try to see the nuance in this application. There's a lot of implications.
So I think it would be best for us to take our piece of the pie and really just vet it out. I'm very cautious on stepping on the other agency's toes. I don't want to make decisions, and I don't think we can make decisions based on where, what they need to make their decisions on. So I think that if we're looking at the zoning and we're looking at the variances, then we're looking at the parking and we're looking at the area variance for the additional apartment. And I think that's where we need to sit. And the rest of it, I think, needs to fall where it falls. That's where I stand now. We can discuss it, but I don't think it's going to fall into us to make those decisions. And we're discussing it, but we're just discussing it to be talking about it, but we're not going to be the ones to say, fill in those boxes and check those, and give them the right answer, because we can't. Maybe.
Well, if it
everybody's
helps,
looking at me like I'm wrong.
if it helps,
No, not at all. No. You're right.
I just wanted to say, if it helps, before the May meeting, and if you ultimately are lead agency, I know you've been lead agency in the past on use variance applications and all that, which are different than this. This is, a ground up construction. We can talk about, an attorney-client session or or whatnot, if the board feels that would be helpful to do that before May, when you will have to do your secret analysis.
I believe that's the best thing we can do. So if after the planning board makes their determination, then I think that if we can plan for an attorney-client meeting, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Good idea.
Okay. But Joe, before we leave, don't look at me like that. Smile. Can you take a
listening.
swing by Hudson Crest? Because there's some stuff falling off the building.
Hudson Crest.
Jaime, stop laughing.
You know, it's just,
You're talking about,
if it's not one thing, it's another, you know? It's.
you're talking about the Smith Robertson building, right? 'Cause
Yes.
obviously the other buildings, because they kind of left it with some of the demolition that they need to take down. Okay.
Yes, so that one building that is standing, there was pieces hanging, there's some stuff on the side of the building hanging. There was a piece that was on the front, I guess on the roof, that is now falling and kind of dangling. You know, like, I'm just saying.
Don't dangle on my
We
side.
will find out first thing tomorrow morning. We'll take care of
Back
it.
to, just if we can real quick go back to the Water Street. I just wanted to say that if there are any like questions that you need answered by the applicant, if you can email me, email Jamie, so that we can reach out to the applicant and have them provide information in advance of the next meeting. Because I think that the one thing that is really important for not just this project, but for any project is, you want to give the applicant time to answer questions.
Sure.
And so if you think of something at home, and you're like, hey, man, I really wish I had this answer. Let them know in advance so they can come to the meetings. I think the most challenging thing for any developer is to come in to sort of an interminable, run of meetings, because the questions that could have been asked prior to the meeting aren't. And so they sort of like wait a month, get questions, answer a couple questions, wait another month, come back, ask questions. And
Yeah, ask them if they want to get into the property on Secor Road that's abandoned and build a garage that connects to
There you
their
go.
building. I'm only kidding.
I'm sorry?
I said they should take one of the abandoned buildings on Secor Road and make it a garage that connects to their building. But
That'll solve the problem.
I'm
That
just
would
a
solve
little
the problem.
hesitant. I'm a little hesitant to encourage a lot of email traffic about substantive issues about the application. So
I wasn't, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I wasn't really saying about back and forth answering questions. Rather, if there's materials that they need to submit, it'd be like, can they submit this? And those materials would get uploaded to the public documents and then would be discussed at the upcoming meeting. Essentially, if there are questions, ask those questions now so we can forward those questions over to the applicant, and the applicant can provide the documents in advance of the meeting so that the public has the opportunity to access those same documents, and then they can present those documents at the next meeting.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. So I'm not thinking like, hey, ask a question, they'll send you an answer privately. That's
no, I don't.
That's what it sounded like. That's definitely not what I'm saying.
No, we get it.
We get it.
We know what you meant, Jaime.
All right. I know everybody's like, I think Bob fell asleep on us, so I think that we need to. I didn't mean Dario either. I think Bob Fritchie was like nodding. So
No,
I
I'm
think
here.
it must be time to go.
I'm here. I was actually doing village emails.
So if there's nothing else, we've already adjourned. We've just been talking to be talking.
Yes. So we're done.
So I'll see everybody in May.
Bye-bye.
Flowers are out.
Yes. And if you actually heard me do the opening, we already did the May meeting, so I'll see you.
Oh, good. We'll see you in June.
One last reminder to the ZBA. We don't have any meetings in August, so we're going to be letting our people know. But I assume some of you are going to plan on going on vacation this year. We don't have a ZBA meeting in August, so
Right.
Not that you only have the ZBA meeting night a month anyway, but August is a good month for us, who do lots of meetings.
Yeah.
We're planning our time off. So you can do whatever you want on that night.
Thank you.
All right?
One night off.
That's right.
Okay, dokie.
May the
All
force
right.
be with you.
Peace out, everyone.
Have a good night.
All right.
I'm out.
We're all out.